If you met your younger teenage self right now, at this precise moment, with all the wisdom you've acquired, what advice would you give them? I was a bit of a shy and awkward teenager, but like many others, I liked reading, dancing, listening to my theory groups, and watching my theory shows, and most importantly, hanging out with friends. When I hanged out with my friends, I would, sometimes take pictures and videos and post them on social media. Not only that, but I also enjoyed joining online community chat rooms where I will meet people from all across the globe and talk of our favorite interests. I think, my experience is quite universal. Many teenagers are living through this, and some past generations too. But at the same time, this is something so new. The internet, technology, and social media, was not the same a few decades ago. Technology and social media has been advancing rapidly, and at the same time, teenagers are growing up. Because of this, since it's very new, many adults don't really know what it's like to grow up with this, advances. And I wish they knew, because as a young teenage girl myself a few years back, I would have loved to hear some of these advices that I would like to give to you if you're a teenager yourself growing up with social media. First of all, peer pressure is real, and it can come in two ways. Physically, someone is staring at you and pressures you to post something, a message, a picture, a photo that you're not okay with. The second one is from online communities. Sometimes people in the internet will try to brainwash you into thinking and having certain opinions. Some of them are quite good, to learn to be respectful, to learn to be acceptance of other people who are different to yourself. But sometimes they can be quite harmful. Okay, let me use an example. A few years back, in a very popular platform, people, I must say neo-Nazis, were hiding as teenagers ourselves and said, oh, let's all this generation, Gen Z, tattoo this in our bodies, in our arms, because it's our tattoo for our generation. Many fell, but they were not really aware that it was actually a neo-Nazi symbol. It was quite a tragedy. So when I say peer pressure comes in two ways, you should always think before you post something. If you feel pressure, talk it out. Talk to an adult. An adult can always help you. Someone you trust. Seek for help. And always remember to research before actually laying something online. The second thing I would like to say, or the second advice, is this one. We make mistakes. Something that we always forget as a community as a whole, no matter age, is that we're human and we're bound to make mistakes, to fail, to fall. According to Joseph T. Hallinan in his book, Why We Make Mistakes, mistakes aren't a result of personal character flaw. In fact, being error-prone is genetic. So to say we're simply evolved to be this way. A single moment will appear differently to everyone who's there, depending on how and where someone is looking. This lack of clarity can cause us to rely on other mechanisms, such as creating the full truth in our minds. This depends on who we mostly identify with and what we expect to happen. Another point, which I know many of us don't really like to say, is that we have biases. It's a survival mechanism. Don't worry about it, we can learn to unbias ourselves. But when we make mistakes, it can happen because we're human and we do have biases. Another point is that we are simple creatures. We look for simplicity. We like to sometimes not read the full picture. And we tend to omit important information, which can cause us to not take a good stand on something it should have. We tend to simplify it to make it more coherent, says Hallinan. Nonetheless, our brains work by making connections. Data that has greater meaning placed in it will be processed across more areas of the brain, making this an easier process to remember later on. These data being our mistakes. So don't worry if you make mistakes. But then remember that when you make mistakes, you learn. And learning is part of growing up. But what does making mistakes have to do with social media? Let me explain. When using social media, a single post, and the moment you publish it, will reach millions in a matter of seconds. And sometimes those posts can be quite disrespectful and harmful without us really knowing. In that case, some people will try to inform you of your error. And it's okay, to make mistakes. We're human. When this happens, what you should do is listen to them and ask them what you did wrong. There's nothing wrong in asking, there's nothing wrong in failing. When this happens, you remove the post, you eliminate it, and then write an apology. Apologizing is also part of growing up, to learn to admit mistakes. And after apologizing, you need to educate yourself to not commit it again, which will be easier because mentioned earlier, our brain connect memories and this data will stay there forever. Another thing, which is very important, that it is quite talked of, but not many people actually do it, is to not consume content that is not for your age. As someone who said when she was younger, consumed content not really age appropriate, I will say I read some not PG-13 or watched some PG-13 content. I would think it will be considered above 18. I think it kind of messed up with some of the way I perceive life. And some of you may be saying, it doesn't really matter. Well, it does. And let me explain why. According to Dr. Justin Colson, exposure to sexual and violent content affects our way of perceiving life. The more we are exposed to these types of content, the more accustomed we become to it. Empathy is reduced, objectification increases, and morality erodes. Exposure to it is empirically proven to have a desensitizing impact on both children and adults. The more we watch it, the less concerned we are about it, which could result in a greater potential impact on us, our children, and our society. Although we may not become, serial killers or promiscuous ourselves, our vision of life changes to something more cynical and dark. From this comes my third point. Because we tend to consume content not for us, and we tend to act older than we actually are, thinking that we are mature enough to act that way, because in reality, we're not. We're teenagers, we're growing up, we're not adults yet. Be careful of groomers. When you think of groomers, you may think of, styling your cat or dressing up for your wedding if you're a man. Well, grooming also is when a pedophile prey on children acting on someone else they're not, to try to get something out of them, and in most cases, sexual content. Okay, we do not want groomers or pedophiles in our, communities. And so how do we avoid them? Here are some very important key points to identifying groomers. First, something that is not really talked of, they always lie and say that you're way mature for your age. They want to say this for you to fall for them and think that they really understand you, when in fact, they don't really care, they just want to get the content out of you. They isolate you from your family and friends and tell you to hide the secret that you talk to them. They ask you for inappropriate pictures, and one that unfortunately I have to tell from personal experience is when they FaceTime, because you sometimes FaceTime friends. they always say that their camera is not working, but they want you to turn yours on. And let me get one clear thing straight. Making friends online is great, but remember, if you make friends online, keep these points in mind, because we do not want to get groomers in our space. To make long story short, growing up is a wonderful experience. Growing up with the internet, it's also very wonderful because you get to document pictures and keep it as a memory book for when you're older. But when doing so, always act responsibly to take care of yourself. Always think of yourself, because you're the one who will always be there with you. Growing up with technology is a privilege, but the privilege comes with a little bit of, precautions. Enjoy life. Document everything. Make good friends. For you to remember these amazing moments. And remember, importantly, always keep yourself safe.